Thanks for having me. My name is Jürgen Schmechel. I'm originally from Germany, living in Sydney now for over 13 years, happily married for 24 years with 2 boys. And today I've discussed on Carry On with Harry tips about how to live a loving, intimate and respectful relationship which can last a lifelong. You know, it's so easy to neglect your spouse in your day-to-day life because you take it for granted. And I think that's the biggest mistake people make. The moment they move together, they kind of take the other person for granted. But it's not. There is a technique. There are do's and don'ts which you should be aware of, and we discussed this today on this radio show. But if you want to learn more about this, please visit me on my website www.inspiring-relationships.com.au and reach out to me because you are worth it. You should.
Thank you for joining Asia's best radio station.
Download latest podcasts of Carry On Harry Show on iTunes.
Now shake hands with celebrities on Singapore talk show Carry On Harry.
Inviting music composers, producers, artists on board on Carry On Harry Talk Show for connecting you to worldwide audience. Write to Harry Johal at carryonharry.com or visit www.carryonharry.com for more details.
Hi friends, welcome to yet another episode of Carry On Harry Show with your talk show host Harry Johal, and today I am very much pleased and excited to invite relationship expert Mr. Jürgen Schmechel on our show to talk and discuss about how we can really improve our relationship, how we can make relationship more inspiring. So do pay a visit to the website www.inspiring-relationships.com.au, and our expert is giving few free coaching session in terms of improving your family relationships, especially with your spouse. And we are going to get some golden nuggets with our expert today on the show. So let's get in connection with him right now on this episode with your show host Harry Johal.
Hey, this is Jürgen.
Hello, good morning sir. Good morning from Singapore. How are you doing?
Excellent. Yourself?
Fantastic. Mr. Schmechel, I'm very much excited. You know, we are going to discuss a very, very important, topic about relationship, because that is what we are actually, seeking in our life, to make our life more happy and fruitful in terms of, living a perfect life. Because unless we are happy in our own heart and in our close circle, we cannot make the world happy.
You summarized it very well. That's exactly right.
Correct. So, first of all, I want to know a little bit more about yourself. Where do you come from, and how did you really get into the field of, mentoring people about relationship?
So my background is German, you can tell by my accent. We moved to Australia 13 years ago, my family and I, married for 24 years with 2 beautiful boys, 23 and 22. And for over 30 years, I was serving businesses around workflow and reporting and optimizing things within their finance or operations department. And in the beginning of 2017, I was doing a meditation retreat for 10 days, and as you know, you should empty your mind, but obviously ideas come up and things come up. So on day 6 of these 10-day retreat, I had an epiphany thinking, there are so many relationships going bust left, right and center, not just in Australia, in Germany, in the US, all around the world, where I think, being married for 24 years, obviously we are doing something right, maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously, but if I could bring a little bit of knowledge about what to do and what not to do within a relationship to the world, I think we can make it a better place. So that's where it started, and it hasn't left me since. And I've looked at stats, I've looked at the dramatic situation all around the world in relation to marriages, and especially to the effect on children. And yes, so I want to make a difference by coaching and mentoring people to get into a better relationship.
Correct. It's very good, that you have 100% dedicated yourself in helping out people, to improve the relationship in their life. So, Mr. Schmechel, how would you define, a good relationship? In your eyes, what is a good relationship? What is the best definition for that?
Well, that's a very good question. So I think a good relationship is built on trust and respect, and on the understanding that each of the two people are individuals and have their own goals in mind, and to acknowledge those. So it's about trust, it's about respect, and it's about being an individual in your own right.
In today's modern time, what are the common factors, which are responsible in, having, relationship turn bad, even though they start, with very, close one, but after a time, why do you think people decide to separate?
So I see the biggest misstep people do when they move together. So while they are dating, they spend time talking, they spend quality time together, and obviously they have a lot of time for intimacy and sex. But the moment they move together, somehow it's like people let their guard down. They think, I'm now in a stable relationship, I don't need to make the effort anymore. So first off, we are talking less to each other. Secondly, we are making less effort to going out together, so the quality time is just diminishing. And then over time, even the intimacy and sex deteriorates. So I see these three pillars, talking, quality time and sex, as the cornerstones of a relationship. And when you move together, people start then to not make the effort anymore.
So we can say that it's just like we take the things for granted that, now we are on a level of, we are already married, and, everything is, moving out. So we take the things for granted. We begin to, in a way, not put those efforts that we were putting into a relationship while we were dating or while at the friendship stages, where we were trying to, impress each other. But now, since it's already a marriage, so we know that, okay, it's over.
Exactly. So imagine you're coming home from work and your partner is running around in tracksuits and not shaved or anything. So you wouldn't do this while you were dating, because then you make an effort to look your best. But now you're living together, you take the other person for granted, and then you let your guard down. But I can tell you, within 24 years of marriage, it's daily work. It is a daily work. It's not just you can zip a week and say, I'm not focusing on my spouse. No, it's daily work.
Correct. You mentioned just now that, talking plays a very, very important role, apart from being intimate and, having a sexual relationship. Would you emphasize or give us some tips like how talking can really make a difference, for any relationship which has, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the lane? What mistake that we make and how we can correct that mistake?
Yeah. So just to give you another stats here, the average time a couple talks to each other nowadays is 7 minutes a day. Wow. And that includes what's for dinner and could you please hand me the butter. So people come home still watching things on their iPhone or on their computer, or they put the television on and just put the legs up and think, yeah, that's the end of the day. So a simple trick here, when you come home, spend 10 minutes with your spouse over a cup of tea and just recount what happens through the day. Because you've been out for 8 hours or longer, so something has happened, and the other one has been at their work. So just by reconnecting for 10 minutes, you enable the other to get a glimpse of your world, and then you keep reconnecting and engaging.
Correct. So what would you advise is the best way to reconnect? Do you mean to say that we need to throw away all those gadgets, which we are hooked on, or the television, that is playing in front of us, and we are sitting together, we think that we are talking to each other, but actually we are not touching the depth that, we really should move. So what will be your tip? How can we really make a difference in what we are living and what we can live?
Yes, so I actually would first of all chunk out the television out of your bedroom, because that's no point where the television should be, and also out of your lounge room. So nowadays the television sits at your breakfast table, the television sits at your dinner table, and just turn it off. There are, quite honest, there are bad news anyway on the television, so you don't want to listen all the time to bad news, and reconnect with your spouse. We are so connected to our gadgets that we are losing connection to our partner. Have you ever been in a restaurant observing a couple right on the next table, connecting with all their friends on Facebook, but ignoring the person who sits a meter away from them? That's shocking.
Absolute. I do. It's not just an observation. Sometimes we can find all these flaws in each one of us. Is that we are busy browsing our emails, we are busy connecting with our Facebook friends, our digital friends, who won't make much difference to our life, but the person sitting next to us could be the one who is the major source of inspiration, who is the major source of strength, who is the major binding factor in our own life. And I think
absolutely
correct. So the time, giving the quality time to this person is one thing that you have earlier mentioned is the pillar of living a very great relationship apart from talking. So what should we actually do? Okay, after putting the gadgets away, what would you recommend that can really ignite that depth that we had during our dating period?
Yeah, it's as simple as just spending some money on going out together. So let's assume you're paying $600 of rent. Let's take 10% of these payments for rent or mortgage, and on a weekly base use this on your relationship. So let's say $600 rent, that gives you $60 to play with on a date night. And if you have kids, that would buy you 2 hours of a babysitter and a pizza at a restaurant. And then, of course, leave the phone at home or put it on silent. So just invest in your relationship, because otherwise the biggest investment will be the lawyer after 8 or 10 years, which then takes half of your asset anyway. So I've coined the term of active appointment. Active because, in contrast to the passive appointment, see you tonight, darling, the active appointment means we put something in our calendar 5 days from now or a week from now, where we say on that night we go out and we go to the beach, or we go to the movies, or we go into a little restaurant and just spend 2 hours together, just the two of us. And the results are incredible, because that's quality time, and you are talking there, and eventually you're coming home and you will be ending between the sheets, because you need connection to also connect intimate.
Can we put up in this way also that when we are at a dating stage, our priorities are different. For example, the priority for a rich man could be that I need to have a beautiful wife in my life. So the emphasis is more on the external beauty, and because for a rich man it could be that he sees everything is beautiful in his life. So probably bringing a beautiful partner into the life would be more like socially recognized in the friend circle. Do you think thinking on those grounds is also a major mistake that people make when they select a partner or decide about a partner, that they really want to focus on the external things more rather than later discovering that there's nothing in substance in the relationship, because internally there's like living a life like a broke, in terms of a happy relationship with a partner. Do you think that is a common mistake also?
Maybe. I can't really comment on that because we are attracted to so many different factors. Sometimes it's the external beauty, but sometimes it's the internal beauty, and I think you can't generalize that. What I think we all need to reconsider is that we urge to live with someone. We want to share our life. We want to be hugged. We want to be held. And especially when we grow older, we want to have someone around us who knows us and who shared a long path in our life with us. So when you're looking out for a partner, you should also consider how you would spend the rest of your life together. And I think then external beauty or internal beauty is less of a concern. It's more of this imagination saying, could I spend the rest of my life with this partner?
Correct. Why I emphasized on this aspect is that means changing priority is that, many times we see that, money, love and sex, they play a major role in, getting people hooked on together. Probably, some might be, like nowadays the thinking is not on that deeper level, because part of our personality or our thinking is hooked on to all these gadgets, so we really don't identify what we really want. We are more into the comparison business, that okay, if my spouse is not just like my friend's spouse. If my friend's spouse is driving a BMW, probably I should look for somebody on a similar standard. Do you think money has also some way made a great impact about the type of life that we have in our mind, and then we just want to pursue, rather than getting into all these deeper aspects of things that we discover after we get married and pursue a life?
Yeah. Well, there are two aspects to your question here. So the first one is, if we always compare ourselves to the person next door, there will always be something where we fall short.
Correct.
But each of us is happy to their own values. So you don't know what misery your neighbor has. Even if he has a Porsche outside and he's got a pool in the backyard, he might be just a miserable person. But you don't know this because you are just seeing the outside factors. So by comparing yourself to those outside factors, you diminish your own values and make your own life miserable, which you shouldn't. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect of your question was about money, and I've also coined the term that money is more important than sex in a relationship. Why is that? Because sex evolves over time. There's pregnancy, there is aging, all sorts of things affect the intimacy and the sexual life within a relationship. But the money perception, if you're a stingy person when you are 15, you will be still a stingy person at 65. So the money within a relationship can cause so much drama, especially when one is stopping to work and not earning any personal income anymore, and the other one thinks, I'm earning all the money, I have all the right to determine what we are buying, and I could buy myself whatever, shoes or a nice camera or things, while the other person is scrapping by and can't afford anything. So money is a big concern in so many relationships, especially when it comes then to mortgage. So then the pressure is on the person who's providing, but he's not talking about, or she's not talking about the pressure being on her. So there's a constant conflict just on the money side. That's why I say money and talking about money is more important than sex.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that's like we just now mentioned about, the comparison aspect, we will always find something lacking, when it comes to comparison. But there's also, this element can also creep up into the personal relationship as well. Like just now you mentioned that one half is earning more than the other half. If we keep on comparing about, what the other person is doing in comparison to so we will always find that lack, somewhere coming out. So what would be your best suggestion, let's say if there's an income difference between the two, people who are in a relationship, but their earning levels are different, what would you recommend in that case scenario?
I recommend to have 3 bank accounts. So one bank account for the one person, the other bank account for the second person, and the third bank account for the combined expenses. And both put into the third bank account according to their means. So if one is earning 200,000 and the other one is earning 20,000, then obviously the one who is earning 200,000 would maybe put in 100,000 of his income into the common bank account, while as the other one is putting in 10,000. So each would put in 50% of their earnings, leaving them with their own cash and their own abilities within their own bank account, which gives you so much joy when you go to work. No matter how much you earn, you earned your own money and you can keep it, and it's not all eaten up in the common bank account.
Correct.
It's about self-worth, and when I say respect is one of the most important things within a relationship, self-respect comes even first, because you can't live without self-respect.
Correct. What are the common, areas, where the couple can really, work out, after, living a relationship, let's say about 5 or 10 years, where the things have gone stagnant, in terms of living a lifestyle which is more monotonous, okay, husband coming to home, a wife is watching the television, or the other way around, and, they're just sitting, having their dinner, and, a little bit of conversation about how the day was. What would you recommend, what should be, the ideal way, or something coming as an advisory aspect from your experience that we can, really make the relationship more juicy and more interesting, in terms of, two people who had spent few years behind them, and, they can really enlighten up that spirit or ignite that spirit in the relationship. What would be your, suggestions?
Well, obviously, being a relationship coach myself, I always recommend to get coaching and get an outside perspective. So that's my first recommendation. But I'm saying this with a smiling face and a twinkle in my eye. So my basic recommendation is, as I said before, turn off the television. That's the first thing. Just turn off the television for 1 week, and you will see that you will make use of the time you suddenly have together.
Correct.
So it is as simple as that you need to change your habits in terms of what you're doing. So instead of coming home and taking all your nice dress off and slip into tracksuits, stay in your normal in your business attire. Let the television be off, and talk to your spouse.
Correct.
Do something different. Maybe spontaneously say, "Come on, darling, let's go to a restaurant tonight."
Correct. Mr. Jürgen, you have just now mentioned about the coaching. Okay, you yourself being a coach, you are offering your coaching program at inspiring-relationships.com.au. Tell us a little bit about how coaching can really make a difference for two people, to make their relationship more meaningful.
The outside perspective actually gives you the chance to see what's out there, because as I said before, we are creatures of habit. We go into a relationship, think everything, we're taking it for granted, and then we go into a routine rhythm where 1 week is the same as the other week. and then a year goes by, and the year goes by as the same as the year before. By consulting with a coach and learning about your own goals and learning about your partner's goals, that enables you to see the world from a different space.
Sometimes, there are inhibitions, that why should we share, our personal life, somebody, who is, an outsider, like, how do you take your clients into confidence, to overcome that barrier, where they want to seek your advice, they want to, really, sort out the matters, but at the same time, they find it that how to, develop that rapport, how do, as a coach, you try to solve this issue so that people are more open to you, because unless they are not open, you won't be in that position where you can really help out.
No, that's not quite correct. I couldn't help them without even knowing their issues. So I don't need to dig into their past and their story. I can show them tips and tricks and recommendations. What are the do's and don'ts within a relationship, and that alone will lighten up so much in their as a possibilities for their relationship. And I give my clients homework, so meaning I give them tasks to do and write down things for themselves, and I don't necessarily need to know the answers, because some of the things probably are better unsaid or not being known to me, and I don't want to go into their dirty laundry, if you understand what I mean. I want to help them to see the world from a different perspective, and that's I think what the role of a coach and a mentor is.
Correct. In a way, you are offering 2 free coaching sessions as I am exploring your website, www.inspiring-relationships.com.au. Give us
Correct.
a brief insight about, what actually goes on in the coaching session.
So the first coaching session is what I call an evaluation coaching session of 17 minutes, where I find out, or we find out, whether we want to work together. So if and how I can actually help you. In the second coaching session, which is then for a full hour, 60 minutes, we then go into what are your goals, what is your perspective on life, and what's your perspective on your relationship, and then I give you hands-on tips and value how to achieve this. And by the end of the second coaching call, we then can evaluate whether we want to take it further. And then I have coaching packages which are reasonably priced so that people can then work with me for a longer time, which there are 2 packages. One is going for 2 months and the other one is going for 4 months. And there are a couple of sessions. They can be done via Zoom or via Skype like we do today, and I'm available then in between for short email exchange. And what I also do with my clients is I do a relationship performance indicator test in the beginning and in the end of our coaching.
What would you recommend, should people hire a relationship coach at a stage, when they are at the dating point, or do you think the coaching is more relevant if, we have already married and lived, a life for, let's say, 5-10 years? What is your recommendation? What is the best time to, look into the coaching aspect?
So I reckon during dating phase, nobody wants to listen to someone outside. You are busy dating, you are busy shagging and spending time together. So during the dating time, everything is looking good. Everything is through a rosé kind of glasses. But when routine or boredom sets in, and you might even have realized that you're not talking much anymore to each other, then there's a great time to take outside advice. And I know that oftentimes the women are more inclined to feel this, that something is missing. But don't underestimate, the men are the same. The men feel the same kind of, something is different. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the kids, or so maybe it's the job, and it feels like as if you're grabbing sand with one hand. You know, when you're grabbing a handful of sand, it rinses through your fingers, and the harder you grab, the more sand actually falls down. And that's how it feels for a lot of men in that phase, that they think, I can't put the finger on it, what it is, but something is not as it was while we were dating. But we men tend to internalize this, so then we take a step back and maybe even withdraw a little bit, where then the woman sees that we are withdrawing, and then the nagging starts, or she's not sure about the reaction, and so suddenly out of a little discomfort, a whole chasm arises, and which eventually leads to breakup of a relationship. So that's why I'm saying, when you are in this phase of routine and boredom, where you realize, it's nice and it's all smiley and kisses, but something is different, then it would be a great time to talk to a coach and get your mojo back.
Correct. In fact, while I was browsing through your, Facebook, which is Inspiring Relationships, I discovered that you have made a very wonderful presentation which is called Love Cycle, and I think it's a very, very unique and compelling chart which can really define how the relationship moves from early stages of dating to all the way to living a married life. In fact, would you like to give us a little bit insight about your love cycle? Does it become a part of the same program that we have discussed today?
Yes, absolutely. So the love cycle kind of came out of the result of talking to men and women and their relationships, that I realized, hang on, there is a flow to it. So it starts with a search. So we are searching for a new love, and then we find a new love, and then we start dating, and then we move together, and everybody is happy. So that's how it starts. But as I said earlier, when we move together and we are in this happy phase, then easily routine sets in. You're coming home, see you tonight, darling. You've got your sport on Wednesdays. You've got your friends coming over on Saturdays, and one week is like the other. So the routine sets in. And then year in, year out, suddenly it evolves into boredom. So you kind of, what do we do tonight? Or let's see what the telly has. And then you stop talking because you're watching television instead of talking to each other. And the next step is that you start to fight over simple things. What's for dinner, or where do we go for holiday, or shall we see the in-laws this weekend? And out of this fighting, then the bigger crisis occurs, which then needs counseling. And I'm not a counselor, so I'm not doing counseling, but at that stage, counseling is needed, and then eventually that might end in the end of the relationship. And then here we go again. So you search again, you have the new love, and you be in the same cycle again.
Okay.
But with one exception, it does not need to be that way. So you don't need to go through the full cycle. If you realize we stop talking, there's still a way to go back to the happy mode.
Correct. In fact, this topic is so interesting, that because it is directly linked to each one of our life. We might be thinking that we are living a happy life, but there are moments, in every relationship life where the time comes when you have that blankness coming. And I think your presence, coaches like your, presence around is like a very, is like an incentive for us to, fix the issues. So I would like you to spill out few nuggets before we end today's talks with you. What would you recommend? Give us a few tips so that before we really decide about the ugly side of our relationship, what would you recommend can really turn the wheel on a proper perspective where we can really live a happy life?
Yeah. So one of my essential tips is to to do the anniversary differently. So instead of having roses and a box of chocolate or going to a restaurant, how about you surprise your partner 1 year, and then the next year it's reversing. So alternating, you kind of kidnap your spouse for something you both like to do, and that could be going to the movies. It could be going to a restaurant, but it could be also a trip to a nice town around, or just spending a night in a hotel. And the interesting thing happens because you don't know, and we all love surprises. So your spouse would say, all right, please keep these 2 days free because I've got something planned for you. And you don't know what it is. So you could even tease the other person, we do something this, or and ask questions. So it becomes a kind of game. And with our relationship, for half a year, we are kind of looking forward to what's going on. And then for the other half a year, we kind of reminiscence about the last one. So what we are building here over years of being married is magic moments. And they last a lifetime. So just by that, you can create so much spark within your relationship. That's incredible.
Fantastic. So, I think is a wonderful tip that you have shared, and I'm very much sure that lots and lots of tips can be learned with an expert like you around. So I would encourage my listeners that do pay a visit to the website of our guest, which is inspiring-relationships.com.au, and you can also visit the Facebook page of our guest, Inspiring Relationships, if you search in the Facebook search.
Thank you for being in tune with Best Talk Show, Carry On Harry, with entertainment editor Harry Johal, on Bala Bala Radio, inviting music composers, producers, artists on board on Carry On Harry Talk Show, for connecting you to worldwide audience. Write to Harry Johal at carryonharry.com or visit www.carryonharry.com for more details.